Hello, good morning. My name is Marieke Flament. I'm the Managing Director for Circle for Europe, and I'm also the global CMO of the company. Circle is a blockchain fintech company. We've been around since 2013. To date, we've raised $250 million. Last valuation was $3 billion, and we serve around 7 million customers across 4 products. I'll talk a bit about Circle, but not that much. What actually I want to talk about today is this concept of tokenization of everything. What it means, the impact it will have on society, and actually the thing that we still need to work on to get to this stage of tokenization of everything. So my first slide, especially for people who are here today, is probably already known. But you know, blockchain are really this additional fundamental new layer on the internet infrastructure. Today, thanks to public blockchain, we can have an open, global, immutable, incorruptible, and transparent way to actually do record-keeping system, transaction processing systems, and secure computing system. When we think of Web 1.0 and 2.0 as the ability to send messages, images, and media, the Web 3.0 is really this ability to be able to send value, whatever value we have between 2 different individuals. With that in mind, actually, the world is ours, right? And I think many of you here probably have fallen down the rabbit hole of imagining what if the future could be on blockchain and all the things that we can do. And that's actually the reality, is that in theory, we can change a lot of industries. In theory, we can actually change fundamentally the way societies will work. We can change the world of finance, we can change the world of accounting, we can change the world of insurance, the world of contract certification, record keeping, systems, law, corporate governance. Basically, every time you have a third-party intermediary, in theory, you can fundamentally change that. Now, the thing is that we're still at the beginning of this tokenization of everything. And what I thought I'd do here is actually show you in a video, which is not ours, it's actually a pretty cool video, but what this means, and actually by tokenization of everything, what we've seen happen. So if you think that, you know, back in the days you only had Bitcoin, not that much was happening, and then as things start happening, you have actually the birth of Ethereum, which brought up this new possibility to have actually smartless contract. And with that, an ecosystem and several forks and different projects, different ideologies, and different things starting to happen. The real thing that is actually fundamental and has been starting happening comes in later, actually more 2017. So you start seeing it pop up here with the famous and infamous ICOs. And it's pretty mind-blowing to see the number of projects that have been popping up in less than 4 years and to get to close to $23 billion valuation worldwide. Surely that looks like tokenization of everything, right? And this is really popping up and constantly going and keeping going on. So at Circle, we actually believe in this tokenization of everything. And because we fundamentally believe in that, we actually are building products around that. What we don't know is actually how long this will take. Is it going to be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? But what we think is actually it will fundamentally change the way a lot of things are done today. I mentioned we started in 2013. Some of our investors include Goldman Sachs, General Catalyst, Jim Breyer, CIC, Bitmain. And we currently have 4 main products. So Circle Pay is our, I would say, most on the right-hand side, our most mainstream product. It's just sending and receiving money very seamlessly. You actually don't need to know what blockchain is to repay someone a coffee and for £2. On the left-hand side, we have our other mainstream product, which is called Circle Invest, very educational, and actually in that product, currently only available in the US, you can invest as little as $1 and start understanding actually what is it thing that actually my taxi driver was talking to me about? What is this Bitcoin thing? We acquired Poloniex less than 6 months ago, and we're actually working on that exchange, one of the largest crypto exchange in the world. And we also have a B2B platform, Circle Trade, which is one of the largest OTC, over-the-counter crypto trading desk in the world, providing liquidity for the entire ecosystem. Because we believe that a fundamental layer that is needed is actually infrastructure, we created an entity called Center that is actually spun off out of Circle, and that entity is actually the framework to be able to create stable coins. And I'll talk more about stablecoins because when you look at the entire infrastructure of what's happening in the blockchain industry, stability is very much needed, and there is actually very little limitation for us to imagine and invent what that could be. So we Center, we're actually working on a stable coin, which is called USDC, that will be very soon released. But actually talking about this tokenization of everything, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that we are not there yet. And I think many of you have heard David Chom's presentation, which was amazing, and I talked about a lot of the limitations that we actually need to get to mainstream. So what I'm hoping to do here is actually bring to life some of those challenges, and make no mistake, the industry is very aware of all those challenges, and there are actually a lot of people who are at this point and at this time and right now trying to figure out how we tackle those challenges. There is a lot of talent getting into that industry. We constantly need more talent, and it's actually amazing to see some of the projects as mentioned by Jason, but there's a lot of talent that's currently floating from financial industry, for example, or Google or Facebook, and going into that industry. So make no mistake, all those challenges are being worked on, and it's a matter of time before we manage to tackle them. But if we look at it, I think challenges can be bucketed into three main buckets. One, the big one, is regulatory environment. We do need regulation. Regulation is here to protect consumers, and regulation, actually very good regulation, can also empower innovation. Those technologies are global and know of no borders, so we also need to think globally, which can be a challenge in today's world. We need infrastructure beyond actually, yes, there are limitations in terms of transfers and how many transactions can be done by minute and by second. That's one that is being worked on. There's also limitations on the impact of ecology that definitely needs to be solved. But there are other infrastructure challenges, such as, for example, how are we going to tackle stability? How are we actually going to tackle interoperability? Today you have several chains, and none of those actually, some of those actually don't really talk to each other. That's not what we have, for example, in an internet world. And last but not least, mass adoption. With my chief marketing hat on, this is like, when are we going to get to a place where actually people really know what it is, or can actually really use those products without maybe having to know the intricacies of what blockchain is. So I'll go into each one of those and actually try to illustrate the challenge, and I've picked some within that to zoom, and also the things that are being done right now to fix those challenges. So regulation. I thought it was actually quite interesting to do that. If you look at, what is Bitcoin? So 2015, the CFTC saying Bitcoin is a commodity. The IRS, it's a property. If you look at FinCEN guidance, it's a virtual currency. BaFin takes the same view. Bitcoin and actually all general virtual currencies goes into being financial instruments. Bitcoin is used for money transmission in most actually of the regulation that we have, for example, here in the UK. And a lot is still actually in wait and see. If you look at the European level, for example, the European Banking Authority is assessing and looking at what's happening to figure out what the framework should be. The same with the European Commission. All of that is fine, and it's very complex. And actually, I think it's also our duty as technologists and people working into the industry to actually help frame those things. And again, clarity, regulation matters, it's extremely important. But the key challenge here is that the speed at which we need to move. If you remember that graph that completely popped up and has actually zillions of different tokens, that's the speed at which those things go. And we cannot really be in wait and see mode. We need to actually work fast, and speed is of essence on that. On this, there are actually great working groups and things that are happening. One that I actually want to call out is the Global Digital Finance Group that's been spun off out of here in London, has hundreds of experts and regulators working on the topic. And if you look at it, we can actually broadly define cryptocurrencies and crypto assets in three main buckets. One first bucket is payment tokens and currencies, those who have actually intrinsic value of what we would put into money, store value, medium of exchange, unit of account. Within that, you have different layers, privacy focused, you have settlement tokens, and stable coins. You have another bucket, which is actually commodities. So being able to use gas to participate in a certain network. For example, ETH to participate in Ethereum. And a lot of infrastructure applications are being developed on that same model. Come to mind, NEO, EOS, Definity, and so on and so forth. Last but not least is actually financial asset tokens, securities. Those who actually have intrinsic features that deserve to serve and represent financial assets, such as financial instruments and securities. The challenge here can be that a token can be born something, and over its lifetime change into something else. But already having clear taxonomy can help frame the regulation and what we need. On infrastructure, the point I wanted to take here is more really focusing just on stability. Again, many more problems that need to be solved and are being worked on. But the one thing I wanted to look at is stability. Yes, Bitcoin is volatile, and so are many other crypto assets. You can't buy your coffee with Bitcoin, might be a good deal today, and tomorrow you actually regret it. But solutions to counter that stability are actually coming into the state of stable coins. And within stable coins, I think there are 3 different buckets that can be looked at. One is actually fiat-backed stable coins, so with US dollar, the most well-known there being Tether and our upcoming project USDC, $1 for one crypto. You have crypto-backed stable coins, and in that, for example, you have DAI, Reserve as examples. And probably the most experimental right now is what you could call algorithmic central banks. But this is very interesting. Of course, it's very risky still today. But at the end of the day, what is a central bank if it's not actually AI and money? And what could you do if you could actually push the limit of that? I'm not saying we're there, but I'm saying this is being worked on. The last challenge that I want to talk about is actually mainstream adoption. I always find it fascinating that took a taxi this morning, taxi driver asked, what do you do? Where do you work? I work in blockchain, what is that? I work in crypto, what is that? It's kind of Bitcoin stuff. Oh yeah, the bad stuff. I'm like, well, you know. But there is still this, right? There is still very little knowledge, very little understanding of actually what is this blockchain thing, what are those assets and what's happening, which honestly can be very dangerous, in particular if you see a lot of people who are not necessarily well informed of what's going on and what the projects are and the risk that is coming with this project and start investing money. But on mainstream adoption, one thing that we have to work on as an industry is really simpler, friendlier UX. I mean, when you look at the length of a Bitcoin address, most of us can remember 4 to 6 digits. I mean, I know 3 credit cards and that already seems a lot, but you know, that's it. And if you look at the length of Bitcoin address, it's 26 to 35 characters. That's very long. You have a public key, you have a private key. Very few people can actually grasp the deepness of that concept, because you can't remember that. You will actually put that somewhere. And actually, if you've put that on a piece of paper, or if you've put that somewhere and it gets stolen, your money is gone. That's not very user-friendly. That's actually, those are not the way that as consumers we can really enter and start playing with those different assets. The key thing here is that in some way it reminds me a lot of the beginning of the internet. Once you send just an email, you had to put lines of code, and just few people could actually do that. And we were really actually at the beginning and the innovators who were in that. I think here we're still also just in that first phase and then that first period, and it's not ready yet for mainstream adoption. The last part on how to get to mainstream adoption is actually, I really believe that it's extremely important to have diverse workforce work on this. When you look at some stats, and I cannot stand here being a woman and not talk about that, when you look at some stats, there are less than between 5 or 15% of women who actually actively engage into that space. Not even talking about, you know, different ethnicity background, different background altogether. And that's extremely important because the impact that this will have on our society and on many industries is actually very profound. So if you keep having that just to a happy few and a small group, the impact that it will have can be actually quite drastic and probably dramatic. So we need more diversity. It's a word that all of us need to figure out. It's not just because there are a few people who can do that. There are ways to actually tap into other industries and to tap into other talents that can come into that industry, and it's extremely important. Education is critical. And education, yes, education for people to come in and help and code, but also education for people to understand what this is about. Yet, ultimately, I think that we will really have reached mainstream when actually the taxi driver doesn't have to know what blockchain is, and when actually it's the same as SMTP. Who needs to know what SMTP is to be able to send an email? All we really need to know is how to send an email. Same with HTTP, we don't really need to know the protocol, but we need to know that there is the internet. And it's actually interesting if you talk to people, what is the internet? You know, people have different concepts. Anyway, we're not there yet, but I think there are key steps that need to be taken away, that need to be worked on and cannot be taken loosely. So last but not least, I think this is absolutely, and if there is just one thing, it's the fact that this is critical. I really think that we are going to get to this tokenization of everything. It's a matter of time, and yes, there are challenges that we need to work on, and again, make no mistake, these challenges are being worked on. But this tokenization of everything is actually extremely positive. What it means, and why our society deserves that, is that it means new avenues for sharing value globally between people, businesses, and society as a whole. It means automations within areas of civil and economic activity that are prone to error and corruption today. It means greater levels of transparency and accountability in societal and economic activity. And it means, ultimately, better levels of global integration and reducing poverty and risk of wars. Yes, this is all very ideologic, but I think that's also why a lot of us are working in this industry, that it has tremendous opportunity. The challenges are not to be taken lightly, and the importance and the role that is being given to a lot of us to actually help shape this future is extremely important. Tokenization of everything has a profound effect of transformation on several industries and society as we know it, and we need to be ready for it and tackle the issues raised. We need better, more harmonized regulations, we need strong, sustainable infrastructure, and we need to work towards mainstream adoption with diverse workforce. Thank you very much.
Marieke Flament, thank you.